Okay. For the church, I'm glad to say that our giving is a little bit above what we budgeted, so that's great. And our expenses are a little bit above. But we've had some major repairs that happened, and that just is going to happen every year. We had plumbing troubles, we had ice machine troubles. Things like that are going to keep happening. We were able to do a new fence this year, so around the garbage bin, or whatever you care to call it. So the church actually ended in, we're like $653.03 off of what we budgeted. So we are just right in line with where we thought we would be with our giving and our expenses. So the church is, again, mid-year, we're in a strong position, and hopefully the next 6 months will continue to move forward and stay in the great position we're in. So are there any questions about the church?
This says 2020 on it. Is it really 2020?
Oh, it should be 2023. My paper says 2023. I'm not sure how that happened. That must be an old.
Is it an old thing we're seeing, or just?
No, the numbers aren't. Let me look at the numbers. I don't. That may be an old. Oh my goodness. Those are old numbers, I think. So I apologize for that. I can email you the new numbers if you would like to see them. I'll be happy to do that. I will tell you, our surplus we expected to be $29,800.28, and it's actually $29,146.98. So we are right in line. Our expenses are, we budgeted $28,905.08, and the actual are $27,174.94, which is wonderful with all the extra expenses. And our giving, our total income, we budgeted $536,710, and it's actually $546,023.74. So that's where we are with the church. And again, a thank you to the clergy and staff for their continued support to our parish. Is there any other questions? Does anybody want to? I have this in my hand if anybody wants to look at it. I'm sitting right back there. But once again, we're in a good position mid-year. So, is there any other questions?
So good.
Yeah.
It's a whole lot easier when you're not in the hole, right? I mean, it's just always an easier report when you're not in the hole. So how many of you were here for Founders Day? We celebrate okay, so half of you weren't here. So Dr. Smith put together this great video for Founders Day, celebrating our 60th anniversary. I want to start off by playing just a few minutes out of this clip for you. And so I think you'll see as I try to tie it in here in just a moment. So let me begin with this.
Now, the story could have ended right here, but God was not finished with this little church. New life was breathed into this old building. In the early 60s, John and Alice McCamey led efforts to start regular Episcopal services in the Frankfurt Church. On April 22nd, 1963, Bishop C. Avery Mason established the Church of the Holy Communion as a mission of the Episcopal Diocese of Dallas. Additionally, the president of the Cotton Belt Railway conveyed the old Addison Depot to the church for the grand sum of $1. In July 1972, Mrs. Jane Lunt, in a contest, submitted the winning name of the church's newsletter, the Depot Digest. God had more plans for this little church. On December 8, 1972, John McCamey and the McCamey family conveyed 3 acres of land to the Church of the Holy Communion, free of any costs. This gift was followed with an additional 1.6 acres of land lying north of the tree line to the east of Muirfield Drive. The 1970s were represented by rapid growth in the surrounding community. It was time to expand. First, Miller Hall was completed and dedicated on December 7, 1980. Then, on October 2, 1982, at the annual Diocesan Convention, the Church of the Holy Communion was officially elevated from a mission to a parish. Expansion continued once again. In 1995, a plan was presented to the church by the vestry to construct a new 12,000 square foot space, education and administration. This would become the Edmund Building. By September 8, 1998, the doors of the Bent Tree Episcopal School opened for the very first time with 35 very eager children. Later, Cranmer Theological Seminary began holding classes there as well. Under God's hand, and with the help of many talented clergy and parishioners, our congregation continued to flourish. In June of 2003, Vacation Church Camp attendance surpassed all previous records. And it was in that year that the shaving cream competition was born. Apparently, someone thought this was a good idea. Also, our Holy Communion service began to overflow and a second service was added. Obviously, the Lord was directing us to expand once again. Our very own parishioner, Frank Meyer, was selected as the architect for a new church. Planning was in full swing. The construction of the new church building proceeded smoothly throughout late spring and summer of 2005. It was completed in late spring of 2006. Dedication of the new church was held on Palm Sunday, April 9, 2006, and went off without a hitch. A new organ was needed. The Dan Garland Organ Company was contracted to produce a 17-rank, 3-manual console instrument. The cost of the organ was underwritten by parishioner Andy Sugg in memory of his wife. The organ was completed and formally dedicated on April 19, 2009. In October, Andy graciously offered to provide funding to finish out the organ to its full 31-rank capacity. In the meantime, planning and construction had started on our new parish hall, Lunt Hall, with the foundation poured on April 6, 2009. The building was completed on September 9, 2009, and dedicated 4 days later. We have seen through the ages that, through God's hand, it only takes one person to start a series of events that can have effects for generations to come. Captain W.C. McCamey and his family built a little church in 1899. That small church has grown into an institution that has been allowed to spread the gospel to individuals and families worldwide. Each of you here today are continuing to write the next chapters in this story. From educating children and clergy, to feeding the poor, to sheltering the homeless, to funding health care in distant lands, our outreach ministries continue to bring God's Word to life. Our church has now become a cathedral. It will remain a beacon of shining light worldwide. And through the continuing efforts of the church, we will be successful in spreading His Word. And through it.
Okay, well, I hope that that's a good segue into what we're going to talk about now. So let me pull this up. So at this time, I'd like to invite Mr. James Dalton, who's our senior warden and chair of our building committee, to come up, and also Mr. David Patterson, who is our architect, who would just come up here and join me. So Building Our Legacy, a Future Leadership and Education Center. Sorry. Stop it. Okay, sorry. So notice the timeline here. 1899, the little white church was constructed. 1980, Miller Hall. 1995, Edmond Hall. 2005, the new church over here. 2009, Lunt Hall, in which we stand today. And then the question is, this leadership and education building, when will it be built? Notice I put in here our next chapter. This is our opportunity to add to the story that we just saw. This is our opportunity to add our part to this legacy. I do want you to know that this is not something that we just came up with, just some idea we came up with a couple of years ago. But I want you to know this has been in the plans for all along. This is the little model that's over there on the table when you walk in. And you'll notice on the right over here was this building that we're talking about. Okay, so you'll notice the church, notice Lunt Hall on the left, and then on the right, notice there's this future plan for this building. Now, due to the spacing, we're not able to put that building over there on the right side to make it look exactly like that. And by the way, notice that this one had a green roof. These models and drawings and things are the best that we can come up with. Once you get into building, it may, due to whatever circumstances, it may end up looking slightly different. But I want you to know, because people have asked me, when did y'all decide to do this? This is from 2004, this model is. Okay, so 19 years ago, this was already being talked about. We just didn't have the wherewithal to do it at that point. But thanks be to God, the church was built and paid off by the people. Lunt Hall was built and paid off by the people of our parish. We are debt-free, thanks be to God. So as we started looking at where this new building should go, we looked at a variety of places, possible places. This was a couple of years ago when we met to think through this. First of all, we talked about Miller Hall. Should we consider expanding it? Should we consider putting the building out here beside Miller Hall in that green space area out there? The third option was to put the building back here behind the church. And the fourth option was to put the building back behind the playground back here on the alleyway. So as we went through all this, talked about the feasibility of it, thought about where would be the best place, of course, we ended up with being back here, the third option, as being the best location for this new building. So this is what the plans would look like, the inside of the building, and I'll kind of walk you through it. So here is this front portico. You walk into the door, the lobby is here. You turn left, and here is the cathedral coordinator's office, Kathy's office. And then there's a vesting room. I can't tell whether this is the men's or the women's, but it's the women's choral vesting room here. The men's choral vesting room is back here. By the way, note that the women vest in there, in that closet right now, the women for the choir vest in there. The men have the luxury of vesting in the men's bathroom. It's always a little awkward when somebody's in the door in there, I think. So that's where we are. This large multi-purpose room right here, we're planning for it to be able to be used for choir rehearsal, Lord willing, a future choir school. It can also be used for AWI sessions, breakout sessions, classroom, a number of different things. That'll be this large room right here. Right next to it is a dedicated IT space. Currently, the IT equipment is back here in the sacristy. The altar guild ladies love that. Back in the back here, this is a pastoral care office. Notice how large it is. The intention is to have several desks in there, so our assisting pastoral care team can be in there. Then we have a breakout or workroom. Think about where a copy machine and things like that would be. And then over here we have the bishop's office in this corner. And then we have the assistant rector's office. And then up here we have a large conference room. Right back here, this is the Cranmer Theological House Library. Across the way over here, right across from that, is a place for visiting professors, also perhaps visiting missionaries, bishops, that sort of thing. And then on the end down here, notice the 4 large classrooms, which we desperately need. Every year when we get to spring, we have to share classrooms with the school, and even then we have to combine classes once we begin our 2 catechism classes. This will help to alleviate that issue.
Bishop off campus.
What's that?
Bishop being off campus.
Yeah, right now, as you know, Bishop and Kathy, Father Casey, Father Michael are all off campus over behind Whataburger in that office facility over there. So these are the drawings of the church. Notice the proposed walkway to tie into the back of the church. Let me go ahead and show you the 3D drawings, because this is what you're going to get really excited about. Here's the 3D drawing of the front of the building. Notice we'll have a driveway that goes along the side of the church with extra parking. Be good for a day like this when it's raining to have a short route into the church, right? And then notice, of course, the building will be back here. But it's beautiful, and the whole intention, of course, is to tie it in with Lunt Hall and with the church and make it look similar. But you see the walkway, the covered walkway going into the back of the church. So whenever the children leave for Children's Chapel, I'll mention this a little later, they can come out right out of that back door, walk right over here into the building, into their Children's Chapel. Won't have to cross the fire. I mean, our children won't have to go over across the parking lot. Of course, we'll be able to not have to set up in here, also be nice. Here's the back side of the building, the 3D renderings. Looks almost like a picture, doesn't it? It really does. So here's a little bit about, we've tried to deal with this as the why and the how. Okay, so here, why do we need to do this? Why do we need this Leadership Education Center? Well, first of all, return all of our staff offices back on the campus. As James mentioned, Bishop, Kathy, Father Casey, Father Michael are all off campus now. We're renting that space. We did that several years ago, remember, to expand the school, grow the school so that the income coming in from the school could help to fund this building. And you'll hear in a moment where that plan has actually worked out. So we did it purposefully with long-term view, long-term plan. Increased classroom space, I just mentioned that. A multi-purpose room, I just talked about that and all the different things that we'll be able to do with that space. Choral vesting rooms for women and men. All the choir said amen, I'm sure. Office for additional pastoral staff. So as you know, right now, a lot of our staff, they don't all have offices. Large conference room. We have meetings here all the time. This will allow us to kind of stay on this end of the campus whenever we have ecumenical meetings and things like that. Cranmer House. This will provide a classroom, of course, and a dedicated library. Visiting professor missionary room, talked about that. A dedicated IT room for live streaming. We think this is something that's going to be continuing on into the future. Additional parking. Many of you don't think this is a big deal, but before COVID, it was a big deal. The 9 o'clock service, there was nowhere to park. We've kind of evened that out a little bit, but Lord willing, with the church growing, it'll be a problem again. Additional storage. And with that in mind, what will this allow us to do? It will allow us to expand our nursery over here and also to expand the silver chalice. So the idea is to take the space with this storage room and divide it up between the nursery and the silver chalice. So both of those will be able to grow. And as I mentioned earlier, have space for Children's Chapel over in the new building. So the how? Well, through your faithful giving, that's how. You're involved in this. This is our project collectively. We think the estimated cost, here again, this is estimated. You always have to be careful with these sorts of things, but going on our best judgment, we think the building will cost about $2.5 million to build. The good news is we have pre-campaign funds of about $800,000, so almost a third. A lot of that's come from the school because we've been able to grow the school, and the school has increased their income. That income money's been coming in. We've been hanging on to with this in mind, with this plan long term. Yes, it is great. We've also, Monica and Bud have been able to get some grants and things like that from the state, which have certainly helped as well. Ways to donate, memorial gifts. There will be opportunities for memorials for the whole building, for various rooms, lobby, the portico, the walkway. We'll have a number of memorial opportunities. One-time gifts, of course. It's been suggested, I think this was done in the past, suggesting that people consider doubling their pledge over 3 years. And then, of course, other gifts such as stocks, things like that. So now time for questions. Let me pull up the picture so you can see that. And we've got James and David here so that if you have whatever questions you have. Robert?
Yeah, you mentioned a dedicated IT. Obviously, I'm involved with that group in live streaming, and we do it for other things, AWI and all the other events inside the sanctuary as well as in here. Has there been any consideration given to while we're doing this fundraising and creating that hub to also update the infrastructure here for more permanent, line in sort of instead of using radio technology, we're using actual, true technology.
That's been talked about. So the question is, with the IT room going into this new building, and we live stream or record from different buildings, including the church and over here. So the question is raised, have we considered basically hardwiring everything into that building? The question has been brought up. I don't know what the cost would be, but we have talked about it. I would imagine, not to get too technical, but I would imagine that we'd have a pipe, a conduit large enough that wires could be pulled into that room, and if they need to be changed out later on, they could be. I don't know if those will be, if they're under the slab or overhead. I'm not sure how that would work, but it has been mentioned. I'm not sure.
We have to have infrastructure in these buildings to.
Yeah.
They have to be together.
Yeah.
Why build it if we can't support it over here?
Yeah, Dr. Smith has done some work on that, I think, in the past. Maybe he can speak to that a little bit more, but it's certainly something that we will be considering and trying to do. Okay, other questions? Yes?
I noticed that there were 4 classrooms. And I just wondered, is the vision that those are equipped for big people classrooms or little people classrooms?
Well, I think that'll be, the intention will be they'll be for big people classrooms, but they could be used for little people. We still have the use of the school, like for Sunday school. We can still have the children go over there, and adult classes could be over here. So if we want to have, as it is now, we can have an adult class like in the Schleicher Library, but then the rest of the adults end up in here. That would allow us to be able to offer perhaps more classes like during the Sunday school hour. So yeah, I think the plan is for big people over here. John?
Could we speak to an estimated timeline just on that?
Timeline?
As I was telling James earlier this morning, we're ready to pull the trigger on setting up the construction documents for the final phases. We have an August 17th meeting set up with the Planning and Development with the City of Dallas. And the civil will be on there, my structural, James and myself, to determine if we're crossing any paths at this point that we might have to address. And to that point we've provided the extra parking, the fire lane extension, all the fire services, water will be extended to the building. And in addition to that, just one other comment, the budget also includes what we call soft cost. That's all your site improvements. That's concrete, paving, fire water, because we're going to take pull the line down south and then to the east with a fire hydrant. That's required by fire. So I just want to add that to that 2.5 million. That's not just the building. When we talk about budgets, there's a building, which is hard cost, and then there's soft cost, which is things around it and that facilitate it. Okay, and we'll get into those discussions later as I get drilled further into the details of the construction documents. Timeline, once we pull the trigger, I remember we set about 9 months from that point on. I believe we can pull it off in about 3 to 4 months with my team, but it's going to take an awful lot of good communication between you guys and James and myself, because I'll take it to the level of detail and specifications so that we can turn it to bidders when we release it. So the 9-month window from August is the worst case, but I'm hoping we're going to back it off of that. So
Yeah, a lot of it depends on the city of Dallas, meeting with them. That's a key meeting. But we're hoping by the end of the year, we'll have the construction documents, and then we can start putting it out to bid so we can kind of firm up what that number is going to be. And then construction, it's probably going to be, 12 to 16 months, depending, supply chain trades and so forth, which kind of lines up with the end of the lease over there where Bishop and the rest of the clergy are over there by the Whataburger. But we may have to do an extension depending on when we can get started and so forth. So construction documents by the end of the year, bid it out, probably is going to take 3 months, 4 months, and then we'd schedule from there probably 12 to 16 months to build it.
The covered area, the covered walkway, where does that mean anybody coming out of that house, they want to say covered going into the sacristy? Is that where?
It'd be on the other side, coming in where,
Yes,
so the
covered
covered walkway will be on the other side of the building, tying into the back side, where that cross is on the other side
I
there.
know where the cross.
Yeah.
it doesn't wrap the building.
No, it doesn't wrap the building.
No, I figured it didn't run the building. It's just if you've got the choir coming through, I mean, it's just having everybody go through the sacristy. If it's raining. The ambulatory hall.
Yeah, if it's raining, you'll have to come in the ambulatory hall and walk through if it were raining, at that point.
How much are you gonna have to build up back there because that slopes like that and the city required us to have that drainage. So there's natural drainage that goes back behind over there.
Yep.
It goes into
Along the
back.
fence line? Along the fence line? Yeah, my civil's looking at that now, and then when we meet with the city, we'll drill into that a little bit. The first answer would be, we can use what we call surface drainage. The parking lot will act as that, and he'll run the calculations for detention, retention, whether you're retaining the water and detaining it. We don't retain it in this case, it's detention, so it's called sheet flow. We're looking at that calculation, so what he'll do is play with the grades and such. And then when we peel to the edge of those trees, which if you look at it, currently it's right 10 foot past that line of trees where it drops off to the property to the east. We're looking at what we're going to need to do to that. We might even pull the building in. I'm at 32 feet. We might pull it into 25, another 5 feet, and kind of adjust it.
Because all of this, and you've got drains in places all set up in this direction to make that flow go through.
Yeah, it doesn't interfere with that.
But we spent about 4 hours, I think, with Mr. Warner on site, my team.
Can we add to the sidewalk back here?
Yeah, it's going to be, that doesn't show it in the rendering, but the walkways are connected. That's why I
Yes.
pulled it out and lined them
It
up.
needs to be wider.
It's all attached.
Across, and I have to go all over.
Yeah, it's all attached. It's just not totally covered if you're going to wrap around the building.
I have a question. Is it ambitious enough that you guys figured out, once this building is built, and assuming that we have the kind of growth that we're looking at, how long will it be before we need to build something else, and then presumably would be run out of property. I know when Dallas built their convention center.
Yeah.
The problem was they were number 9 on the list of top cities for conventions, and all the new building did was keep them at number 9.
Yeah.
It didn't expand or make them bigger, attract more conventions.
Well, I think if you remember when we first presented this, we were actually planning on doing a scale back version, like a scale back version with the intent of later adding to it. And we determined with the way that the costs go up, every time you build a building, the next building costs a whole lot more. We think it would be cost, the right thing to do is go ahead and build the whole building that we need now. If we were ever to need something else, my guess is it would probably be adding on to Miller Hall. But I don't anticipate that. Our plan ultimately is to try to plant more churches around the DFW area. Of course, we want to be good and strong to support those churches, but ultimately that's what we want to do is plant more churches. So we're not thinking we're going to be some sort of mega church or anything like that. So that's the long-term plan. Other questions? Andrew?
It seems like this is a done deal, like it's what are the roadblocks? What can stop this from happening?
Well, the city of Dallas, of course, is one big roadblock. We don't know what they're going to put ahead of us. But I think finance-wise, before we would do anything, I think we would need, the vestry hasn't completely specified, but I would think 60 to 65% either in hand or pledged to start the building. So I think that's kind of the minimum. We really like to have more than that. We don't like debt.
Like to have all of it.
We like to have all of it. It would be ideal. We really don't want debt. But if we have to service a little bit of debt, the money that we're spending over on the office facility where we're leasing, that money could be redirected to servicing some debt perhaps. Although we'll have some increased costs with the building, cleaning and things like that, increased electricity and water, all that. So ideally, I think the biggest roadblock is raising the money to do it.
Do you anticipate any of the neighbors giving a treat this time?
The question is about the neighbors. We've talked about it. Neighbors are never going to be happy with you, building. That's just never going to happen. But we think because of the location, because it's not a sightline issue, because it's kind of back here, other than taking up where people walk their dogs, there'll still be all of this green space back here. We're anticipating some pushback, but I don't think there's anything that ultimately they really can complain about. I'm sure they'll find something. I don't mean to say that. So, Deacon Cheryl.
So the room number 11, the visiting church professors, does that represent an offset of outlay the same way the physician's office and the full-time Whataburger, we're spending money for that to exist? Aren't we currently spending money for the visiting professors and
That's a Cranmer. The visiting professor room there, and that's kind of a holding place. What we'd like to do is have a place there where if a professor comes in and teaches a course over the weekend, he could stay there.
But we're currently paying for them to stay someplace else, right?
No, the Cranmer House pays for that. That's a Cranmer House expense currently. So it's not.
This is supporting Cranmer, right?
There are several things in there supporting Cranmer, and I'm anticipating Cranmer House will probably contribute. I don't have a dollar figure, but I do think Cranmer House will probably contribute to the plan. Very good.
Just maybe address this, that 2.5 does not include what we're doing here.
Right.
And so we're a third of the way there. And if everybody jumps in and we get there fully, and we don't want people to stop because we still got to build this out. So the 2.5 doesn't include what we need to do here. I just want to make that clear.
Yeah, so John's point is, we talked about having the new building will allow us to expand the nursery and the silver chalice. That money, that cost is not really in this. So as he said, giving, give for that, hopefully, if there's some left over, we'll be able to take care of this as well, or to give to this as well. Jerry?
Have you started interviewing contractors?
No, not yet.
Charlie, you'll remain where you're at, though. Your office and Bud and Donna, they'll remain where they're at. The
Right.
only
Correct.
gain in Edmond would be the library for the school, that space.
Well, that room's still going to be as is for now, the Schleicher Library over there. But as far as the offices go, the plan is for us to stay over there. We really think it's good to have a male presence there, for the school. And so for Bud and I to be over there, and of course Donna to be there as well. She's able to help with parents, especially parents bringing their children in the middle of the day, and all the teachers are back in the back, administrators in the back. She's able to help with that. So the plan is to keep those offices over where they are.
Is there a bathroom and shower plan for that? Well, a shower plan for that building, if you're gonna think about it?
And washer and dryer.
Yes. So there are two questions, there are two plumbing questions.
All of that's been discussed.
We've talked about it, but it's not a done deal yet.
We're asking.
Yes, I got it. I hear you. Yes, you're not the first person to ask. How about that? And so we have taken that under consideration, and we've talked about it actually for both of those things.
We all need a full-size one.
Yes,
You have
we-
8 bags of.
We have heard that. Yes, thank you. Gordon? So the question is, what will happen with Miller Hall? And the plan is to keep using it. The youth are still using it on Wednesday nights. The school uses it every day. When the kids come in, they go into Miller Hall. So it's primarily going to be school and the youth building still be used for that. And occasionally, for other meetings, or like AWI, when we have AWI, we have a room set up there for someone to speak, that kind of thing.
Weddings, special occasions.
Yeah, special occasions, that kind of thing. Vern?
What's the total square foot of the building?
6305, including all the walkways. You take out the walkways, it's about 5450.
Excuse me?
Substantial.
Yes.
Is
Amy?
it being, will it be also expanded up if necessary? Will it be structured so there's support if we ever need to put a second story on it or more?
That was discussed.
Classrooms or anything?
Yeah, that was discussed as well, and that's something we'll have to talk with the structural on.
The structure could handle the capacity. What we talked about was in adding the second floor, you'll be required to add an elevator and some other expenses that hit the building. But it's going to be what we call sticks and brick, which is what these are. It's wood construction. So it'll be able to handle it. We've already set that up, but we don't anticipate at this point. I haven't located an elevator area on that footprint.
Now, someone asked down the road, this would be adequate. Well, a second story may be necessary down the road eventually.
It substantially changes the occupancy situation, and it was quite costly. That's why I was told we're going to go out further to it. On the master plan that we had originally, I don't know if Father's pointed it out, that's set up to actually extend and put a building to the back side of the playground or further down. Could be a hall, a banquet hall, or whatever you need to add. So that's what that setup is feeding. It's not just that building. I like to look to the future when we do master plans, how it can be extended easily without another hit or substantial cost in paving.
We spoke extensively about the two-story building, but the cost of the elevator is
And the maintenance.
gigantic. We just spoke with Bishop Walter the other day. They're building a church in Tyler, and he said their elevator was $100,000 plus
Stairwells.
for an elevator. Yeah. So we talked about that, and we we decided let's try to keep it one story if possible. Curtis?
I don't know if we've covered this in the past, but I just don't know, so excuse me for being naive. Why did we abandoned the original design and we're going with something altered like this?
You talking about with the model?
Yeah.
There's just not enough room to that side to build a building.
What happened is we had to move this building over further. When we did that, we had to change the pitch of the roof because of stuff from the city planning, but we had to move it over further. When we did that, that changed what happened over there. There's just not enough room.
Yeah, the property line's right there.
Yeah, the master planning, I based it on the updated topo that I was given. You didn't have the clearance off the property line, the build line. You're going to end up with a very narrow building and very deep, which is very inefficient. This gave you extra parking. It sets up for future growth beyond that. So that's why I think the decision was made at that level.
Also, one thing that happened was a parishioner stepped forward and saw that we had this wonderful new church, but we still had a parish hall over in Miller Hall, and we couldn't fit. So a parishioner stepped forward and said, I will put up X amount of dollars to build the parish hall first. And that's
Correct.
kind of the way it went.
Correct.
What are the next steps?
I got a question back here, sorry.
I'm just curious about the parking that goes down the side of the building. Is it like a roundabout at the end or?
You have to have a roundabout at the end for a fire truck. So if a fire truck comes in, they have to be able to turn around.
Correct.
That's why there's a little, at the end of the building, you'll notice there is an area there for the fire truck to be able to turn around. Yeah. So somebody said, question about next steps. I hear that.
Yes. What are the next steps?
Next steps, thank you, Christopher. Next steps are, we're going to be reaching out to you about trying to find out what you might be able to give over the next few years. So this week, we'll be sending out a letter coming from me, talk a little bit, kind of encapsulate what we talked about today. And then within the next 2 weeks, you'll be receiving a pledge card, kind of like what we do with our annual pledge drive. We'll have a pledge drive dedicated for the building. So we want you to start praying about this. You'll notice on the tables, there are little trifolds. We hope you'll take one of those with you. And it talks about the different ways that you can give. And hopefully you'll be able to remember by looking at that some of the things that we talked about today. Also has a prayer on the back, which we're going to pray here at the end of the meeting and pray that the Lord will provide for us to be able to do this building. Well, I think we have reached our limit here. Thanks, special thanks to David Patterson for making the trip, being here for us. Thank you for inviting us. Thank you. And also to James. I also want to recognize if we could get all of the people who are on the building committee and also on the capital campaign committee, if you would to stand. Thank you. A lot of time. Let me tell you what, there's been a lot of time spent on this, a lot of hours, a lot of meetings, a lot of planning, and we've got a lot more to go. But we've got some dedicated folks who are working on this. And so if you do have a question about perhaps memorials, just make sure you speak to one of the capital campaign committee that's being chaired by Barry Roop and Linda Prickett, but you saw some of the other members in here as well. So if you have questions on that, do reach out to them. But we will, like I said, be sending out the pledge cards within the next couple of weeks. So hope you'll be prayerfully considering what you might give. Well, let's stand and let's say this prayer together. Let us pray. Almighty Father, look graciously upon thy servants at Church of the Holy Communion Cathedral as we seek to build a center for education and leadership for the extension of thy kingdom. Inspire us by thy Spirit that we may lay its foundations in love and set up its pillars with sacrifice. Move the hearts of thy people to give willingly and to work patiently in unity, that this building may be constructed for thy honor and glory through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Amen. God bless you all. Go in peace. Thank you for being here.